Hi, I'm Alisa Huffman. I am a licensed independent clinical social worker. I also have my feline supervisor Jester here. And some of the things that I like to do outside of work for fun, I tend to be a pretty geeky person, so I like doing video games and into Star Wars and things like that. And yeah, just spending time with people I care about, reading books, doing some nice, quiet, cozy game type activities just to recover from work. I specialize in trauma and dissociation, and a big reason why I do that is it is such a foundational part of a lot of different symptoms and presentations. It feels like we can get to really some of the root issues even before we address those other clinical matters as well. I really enjoy treating trauma and dissociation with EMDR, which is eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. It is a proven and very efficient method to be able to help process trauma through bringing together the neural pathways and building new neural pathways that have been blocked before because of the trauma that has happened. So another method that I like to use is geek therapy, which is using geek cultural artifacts and different elements of geek culture into regular day-to-day that we often use therapy methods like dialectical behavioral therapy and cognitive therapies and things like that. It's basically like using geek language to be able to connect with people and allow them to use the narrative storytelling that is very helpful for them based on their interests, especially, again, Star Wars and different geek areas like that. So what inspires me to do this line of work is, as a clinical social worker from a social work background, social justice and challenging oppressive systems is extremely important, I believe, in this line of work. And focusing on one's mental health and being able to do self-care and stress management and help people navigate those systems really helps to create a more successful atmosphere and lifestyle for them. And it's really amazing to get to see, once people see those challenges and start overcoming them, how their lives just improve so greatly. So one thing that I think is really important to be able to continue making progress in therapy between sessions is practicing some of the skills that we may talk about in session, even if there isn't a mental health crisis or there aren't symptoms coming up. The way that I like to frame this for people is, a lot of people know that if their clothing catches fire, they need to stop, drop, and roll. And most people haven't had that experience, thankfully. But the reason why people know to do that is it was so ingrained from such a young age, and it's something very repetitive that we've gone through socially. And so our coping skills work the exact same way. We need to practice them when we're not under stress so that they can be moved into that long-term memory. When we are in stress, they become a lot more accessible that way. One of my favorite self-care practices that I utilize and I love being able to share with other people is the idea of the morning pages that come from Julia Cameron's book, The Artist's Way. And what those are is free writing, free journaling, basically. 3 pages every day, just a brain dump. They're called morning pages because they're often recommended for first thing in the morning, but I think you can do it at any point throughout the day that works for you as a regular practice. I also think what can be helpful, because a lot of people really worry about sort of going off the rails, as they like to say, as they're doing free writing. So a more structured approach is helpful, adding some areas of gratitude at the end. I know gratitude sounds cheesy. I also think that it's important that when we are working on improving ourselves and growing and basically surviving in the world that we live in, we identify those reasons why. And I think a gratitude practice helps give us and reminds us of those reasons why we can enjoy life and why we do the things that we do in our day-to-day. I think that a major component of communication within families and working on improving that is boundary setting and respecting boundaries. I know that can be really hard for people to sort of understand and work with sometimes. It can seem like, well, if I set a boundary, I'm actually putting up a wall. I like to consider it more like a fence where you're allowing permission of when and how people can enter. And sometimes it is hard for families to hear that, but boundaries are intended for strengthening families and strengthening relationships rather than destroying them. And really, with families, for a healthy familial relationship, it is important for people to be able to communicate what they want and need, even if they can't necessarily get that, but to be able to establish those lines of communication and boundaries really help with that.